Hey everybody, it's Evan Arcade, and oh my what, it's an episode on anime. Joining me once again is Jason Patrick. What's up, Jason? Are you stoked for tonight?
Hey man, what's going on? Sure. No, I'm excited. I'm excited about this episode. Definitely have a relationship with anime, or I did back in the day.
Yeah,
But
I,
yeah, we'll
and I,
get to that.
I think that's the reason why we're also talking about this because we slightly mentioned it on our morning show. Um, I think we had mentioned that I was watching an animated film, and I think it kind of brought on the fact that that's kind of like anime, but it's not really.
Yeah,
Uh,
that French film that you sent me,
yeah,
right?
the Spanish film, right? Yeah, and so
Or Spanish, sorry.
yeah, but it's like it's European, whatever. No, not whatever.
I
It
mean,
is.
mine was French. The Lost My Body, the one I recommended to you. But
All right, right.
yeah,
Oh, I thought it was okay. Cool. I didn't know that it was actually French.
yeah.
Um, but as always, don't forget we are on Instagram, YouTube now. You will be actually able to see our ugly mugs on the big screen. Well, whatever screen you're using. A lot of people use their iPhones, right? The
Yeah.
small screen. I'm up to like episode 7 or 8, I think that I'm
It's eight,
uploading. Yeah, it's
eight.
eight.
Yeah,
Cool.
yeah.
And so we were almost there to catch up with where we're at right now. This is I believe episode 12.
Mm-hmm.
But
That's right.
you could also follow me on. I mean, I'm having an arcade, obviously. He's Boy Decide.
Yep.
Also, Hip Arcade, Hip underscore Arcade is like the brand that's like producing this, and that's where you'll find the YouTube channel. The YouTube channel is Hip Arcade. That's where you'll find all the Oh My Wad episodes, plus Spotify and iTunes, of course, if you don't need to see us at all. But without further ado, how did you get into anime, Jason?
Well, I mean, we kind of talked about this before, but like going into it, I guess when I was a kid, there was things I saw here and there.
Hmm.
Ninja Scroll, obviously. Um, I remember Street Fighter the animated movie. But yeah, I remember being, especially with Ninja Scroll, I would definitely was too young when I saw that film
Yeah.
because I do remember like it making a mark on me as far as like its sexual content and its violence.
Yeah.
So I don't really like remember it too much. It's on Hulu right now, so I actually might watch it after we're done recording here tonight,
Oh,
just
cool.
because I want to see it again. I know it's like a respected film, so
Right, right. Yeah.
yeah. What about you?
I think yeah, no, during that time I think even then among the I guess the community of whoever was watching it back then, that was still a pretty big film when Ninja Scroll came out.
Hmm.
Um but I would say like for me the very first time I got into it, and maybe I might have been in it indirectly because I remember there used to be this channel on in in Chicago. It was it wasn't channel 11, but it was like a public access channel. And
Okay.
like at 3 a.m. or whatever, they would play anime, and it would be like all it's like whatever like this. It's where I got to see the first one I got to see was Golgo 13, which is like this Hitman. It's very famous manga
Okay.
series, and I remember also too because it's like your typical Bond. It was like around the 60s, 70s ish, and it showed some titties and stuff, and I was like, holy shit! I got like nobody knew because like if somebody knew what they were playing, they probably would take them off the air, so you can't show that stuff because it was like I said, this was like public access, where it was just watching in the middle of the night on my old CRT TV. Um, and then after that, and this is when I was even like around the same age, I would say, young teen in Mexico. My cousins introduced me to I don't remember the name of it here. It has something to do with like the zodiac people. Zodiac people. That's horrible. Actually, I should have
Okay.
looked it up right now. But they're each person is like a different zodiac, and they're like the horsemen of the zodiac. There's like Pegasus, and it's a very famous anime too. Like that's the
Okay.
funny thing is like I don't even remember it what's in English, but it is popular. I think it came back again recently. But Dragon Ball was the
Hmm.
big one that hit me in Mexico. My cousins would have bootleg tapes that they would buy at the flea market from whatever they would can get over there. And I didn't even know Dragon Ball was based off of a TV show, which was
Yeah.
originally based off of the manga. For me, my first introduction to Dragon Ball was just all films. We just had the films, and I thought the films were amazing, right? Because it's like these characters are very unique. They power up and they fight. That was like my real, I guess, look into what anime was versus like Golgo 13. I thought it was just some kind of weird like cartoon movie. Like I had
Mhm.
no idea what that was. Like that's just kind of weird. But Dragon Ball was like the first one where I was like, oh man, this stuff's cool. Like that's like
Yeah.
I've never seen anything like fighting or whatever like this.
Yeah. And there was a lot of, obviously back in the day, anime took a while to get here, right? And there
Yeah.
was like Akira and Ghost in the Shell, which I'm sure we'll get into
Hmm.
later. But like I didn't see those when I was a kid. And then when I was a teenager, I do recall it's around the same time I was going to Wright College for a little bit, and
Hmm.
I met a dude there who was really into anime, and he convinced me like to buy a bunch of
You
VHS
buy
tapes off
'em.
of him. He just kind of coaxed me into it, and I just went with
That's
it.
funny.
So I mean, it had a few films in there. It was incomplete, but it had a few Evangelion
Yeah.
VHSs, and that's a series I still haven't seen. Um, so I mean, I bought a bunch of that stuff, um, and then my first girlfriend, she had Ranma One Half, like the video game for SNES.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then eventually, so that's like the first proper anime I ever got into was Ranma One
Mhm.
Half, and that's actually my email address that I use still to this
Yeah.
day. I'm sure I mentioned it before on the podcast, but Ranma627 at Yahoo. That's like still my main email. Uh, and it's the series I didn't even see through. I'll kind of get into that later, but
Yeah.
that was like my first, I guess, proper anime series that I
Right.
got into.
Were you ever into manga at all, or did you know what manga was back then either?
So yeah, I mean, not really, not until I started going to conventions, but I never really read much manga. When I was doing notes for the episode, I didn't recall ever reading it, but then I realized it's actually right back here. I realized my buddy Rudy bought me a bunch of the Blade of Immortal mangas.
Oh, cool.
So I
Yeah.
read quite a few of those. They're amazing. I still haven't watched
The
the
live action
animated
film.
series, and I heard a live action film's really good too. But yeah, that's the only manga exposure that I
Yeah,
have.
for me, I think it would have been.
Mhm.
I didn't know about manga. I didn't know the connection between manga and anime back then when I was a kid growing up.
Yeah.
I knew about the comics afterwards, like Akira. I didn't even realize Akira was like a big volume set of manga.
Mm.
Uh, but I was going to really quick touch on Ranma. Ranma was the other show actually that was actually on TV in Mexico. So a
Yeah.
lot of these shows like Dragon Ball and Ranma, and in Spanish it's called Los Caballeros del Zodiaco. I still
Mhm.
can't remember what they're called in English, but all these were on
Were you
TV in
talking about
Mexico.
that Zodiac show still?
Yeah, yeah. I'm
I
just saying
looked it up. What I came up with is Knights of the Zodiac.
it's probably
I'm
that.
not sure if that's
Yeah,
it.
I think it's that one. Yeah,
And then it eventually became Zenki. I don't know, but
probably. Do they look like all shiny, like Silver Hawk looking, like
yeah,
spacey?
they
Shiny?
kind of
Yeah,
look like Dragon Ball Z characters.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Also, Battle of the Planets was another popular one back then. And Gatchaman, you remember
Mhm.
those? It was kind of like it had like the same Speed Racer. I just thought about that now. I didn't actually add that in there, but Speed Racer was a very popular one when we were younger too. And that's actually one of the shows where my parents kind of watched as well because they thought it was interesting, just the anime style, whatever. But what I was getting at is like those were the shows that were actually on TV. Like this was way back before like the United States ever really got into it.
Yeah.
Like I think we were mentioning it before, but like eventually into the 90s was a Cartoon Network that started Toonami.
Yeah, Toonami and then Adult Swim eventually later on down the line. And even
Right,
MTV, I mean, that's probably not like technically anime, I'm not sure, but like MTV had Aeon Flux.
right, right.
And I remember watching Spawn when I was younger, but I guess
Hmm.
that's more like westernized, right?
Right, yeah, yeah. But it still had its own style, like that, very similar to that. And
Hmm.
one thing that I mean, I know I mentioned it right here in my notes, but it's very interesting that after the fact is a lot of this stuff was based off of books, not only just the manga stuff, but it's also based, a lot of the anime films and shows are based off of actual books that were written, like, just fiction books that
Uh,
Japanese writers would have that they turn into films or TV shows, which is pretty interesting. But when it came to the stuff that you watched, would you say like, and this is for me, like for me, I watched mostly more films than actual shows. Would you say the
mm.
same thing was for you in terms of the manga?
I
I mean,
would say a mix. I would say a mix of the two.
really?
Uh, yeah. I mean, I really got into TV series, so like, when I finally did start getting into anime, and then started like going to conventions and stuff.
Mhm.
Uh, a lot of it was like a collector mentality that I had, and so that's why I was getting into it because I had a big DVD collection, and I
Yeah.
also had like my separate anime collection as well.
Mhm.
For me, it was more about buying anime than watching
And
anime.
just having it.
Yeah, which is I know it's shitty. I mean, yeah, especially like with anime in particular, I always felt like I was a poser.
Mhm.
Which we'll get into that
What
later
if
because
we
yeah,
could
we are
have-
going to talk about like our level of fandom.
Right.
Uh, but yeah, it was usually TV series, and the reason for that, it's like a lot of animes have like a 26 episode run, and that's it. And I found that cool. Like I like when things have a beginning, middle, and then, and they don't drag out.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of big series that I get into. Even though that's why I like the first series that I got into, Ranma. I don't ever see myself like seeing that through because there were so many seasons and there were so many
Mhm.
movies. And same thing like with a lot of the series that got popularized in the West, like Dragon Ball and Naruto and stuff like that. It's like it's just too much for me.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
not interested in seeing something that has that many episodes attached to it. So.
Right. I think that's funny you mentioned that too, because that's for me. For the longest time, it was just films, and then
Hmm.
I decided. I think there was a couple of times where I decided to actually watch an episode of something, and I noticed that Dragon Ball was way different on the show form because it was like it's cheap, right? Animation is expensive, so most
Hmm.
of the time when you're expecting to see like fights that you're used to on the films, they don't even fight until like maybe the last episode of the season. Like half the time is just them talking about it or getting better and they're
It's
just
like
yelling
build
at each
up.
other. Yeah, and it was the most annoying thing, and it made me dislike the show incredibly
Hmm.
bad. But then, like you mentioned, Evangelion, that's a show that I really got into. I bought the full DVD box set and watched all of that
Hmm.
through its entirety. I mean, like it's funny because when you're young, I think Japan has a better grasp of what it's like to be a kid in a sense. Like,
Hmm.
I mean, yeah, or even just young adults. Like, I mean, obviously they add the violence and the sexuality stuff. Like you see like a cute girl on there and you just immediately fall in love with them because they're just like cute and they're talking to the boy with the main character is always like the nerdy, quiet kid, which is everyone kind of relates to. So you
Hmm.
immediately like just kind of like grab onto that versus like stuff that we had in the U.S. never really kind of related to us in that way. I feel. So I think that's why I mean, I got into Evangelion because of that, because I was like, whoa, that girl's hot. I was like the way she's drawn, and I want to see what this is about. Then I was like, oh, it's about giant metal, robots and like their flesh. And the show itself is still kind of boring because the kid is really whiny and he's always crying, and it's just like not that fun to watch for a while.
Yeah, I remember that guy, the guy that I mentioned that I met in college who sold me that stuff. Like, yeah, he had showed me some Evangelion stuff and was even referencing it and like how Metal Gear Solid took a lot of the frames from it and stuff like that. So that was pretty cool.
That's true. Yeah, a lot of the stuff for the Max and the way they shot everything is interesting. Um, so what do you are those like all the favorites you had back then? I'm saying before we move on to like the more newer stuff, but like any other favorites that you might have seen. Like for me, I would say like yeah, Dragon Ball, Ranma,
Uh-huh.
Ghost in the Shell was one of the big ones. Ninja Scroll, Akira, of course. I mean, I was in college around that time when I saw a lot of those things, and I was
Okay.
in school for animation, so for us that was like a really big deal to see all those films. Um, Go ahead. I just look
Yeah,
at.
so yeah, Ranma, on our morning show, we kind of talked about Satoshi Kon. Once I finally got into
Mhm.
him, like I didn't get into him until I went to that Millennium Actress screening that I mentioned. We just got passes. So that was like the first film I saw of his, and then of course I went back and watched Perfect Blue. I actually hadn't seen Tokyo Godfathers, I'm ashamed to say, uh, till last year.
Mhm.
Logan Arcade has a anime nights,
Oh,
like once
cool.
a month.
Hmm.
So they showed Tokyo Godfathers, and that was awesome. Bebop was the first series that I fell in love with. I actually was doing a rewatch of Cowboy Bebop that I kind of gave up on, but that series is incredible. It
See,
affected me.
I have to
Yeah,
give that another shot because I thought it was
you
boring.
do.
I couldn't get into it, but I
And
know
you
it's
know, it's
the best series.
very episodic, which some
Yeah.
people like that, some don't. So like each one has like, because they're bounty hunters, so there's
Yeah.
always like a bounty of the week type thing.
Right. Right.
But then every few episodes they'll have like a more serious one that features like the backstory of the group of people. But yeah, I think you'll like it a lot because like the
Yeah.
soundtrack's amazing. It's very jazzy and stuff like that. And yeah, it's just a great series. And that was actually the first, going to conventions. That was the first thing I dressed up as was Spike. That was like my first and only cool costume. Like I did a Crazy 88 person once because I was such a big Kill Bill fan.
Yeah.
But yeah, back to that. Yeah, Bebop, their follow-up, Samurai Champloo, which I didn't love, but it was, to me it wasn't Cowboy Bebop level, but it was still really good.
Right.
Trigun, I watched
Yeah,
that.
I was gonna mention Trigun too. I really like the character of Ash.
Fully Cooley, obviously. Chobits, I really, so like just like Ranma, like, and like when I was compiling this list or doing research for this episode, I'm actually thinking about getting back into like anime.
Yeah, yeah.
There was
No,
just a
yeah,
lot of
exactly.
series.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of series that I've always wanted to get around to, and I never did. Yeah, and that's it. Like some Hellsing, My Koku, which that's actually
I never even heard of that one.
Rumiko Takahashi, who did Inuyasha and
Oh,
Ranma.
cool. Mm-hmm.
That's like one of her first series.
Okay.
It's only like 5 seasons.
Mm-hmm.
She has an issue of making her fucking shows way too long.
Yeah.
But that one I'm interested in because it's more. We'll get into this later, but it's more like human stories, like grounded anime.
Right.
So, yeah.
A few more from my list I wanted to mention too is like you kind of mentioned that. I also wanted to say Jinro because it was like a very war. It was like an alternate reality, alternate history. Like if I think if Germany had won the world wars, and so like Japan is still very much kind of like Gestapo like, and they have like these soldiers dressed up. It just looked really cool. So I was like, I'll see it. And it had a very interesting story kind of behind the whole Red Riding Hood, the wolf in disguise sort of thing. I remember my friend, he gave me some tapes, and a couple of them were La Blue Girl, which is straight up just hentai. It was just like anime porn, basically. He gave me another one, but I can't remember the name of it. But I remember my parents found it. And they're like, "What's this?" I was like, I was glad at that point we didn't have a VHS player upstairs anymore for them to see what it was. They just, I mean, that's the funny thing too, is like adults don't know what we're watching. It's like, oh, it's a cartoon, but they have no clue what it is that the actual content is in there. Another one was a Bubblegum Crisis, Lupin, of course, Digimon and Pokemon. Those were actually originally Japanese. Sailor Moon, my sisters love that stuff, and we used to watch it all the time too. I mean, it's the Sailor Scouts. Vampire Hunter D was very popular back then too. All the goths.
That was part of the collection that I bought for my friend. That was in it.
Yeah,
I think Esclafone was in it too.
Esclafone, yeah, that was a very popular one. Yeah. And then what did I? This last one right here. I think I mentioned the Gundam series, especially like original Gundam was kind of boring. I always found it to be very boring until they released Gundam Wing, which kind of made them a little bit more like all the lead pilots look cooler. Each one had their own style. Their Gundams had their own style versus before that it was just kind of like basic blocky tank looking Gundams that I found very boring. So that show kind of made it cool again to get into that. But really, I would say like one of the things that I don't think I ever equated to anime, which is what we're moving into next, is Ghibli films.
Yeah.
Because back then, I think I just thought they were just like kids films, which they were kids films.
Yeah.
But I remember watching Totoro as a kid, and then not thinking like this is anime. I just thought, oh, it's just a kids movie, kids cartoon. Did you watch a lot of Ghibli stuff back then? Like, because a lot of it is old.
Yeah, I mean, so Ghibli does deserve to be segmented off here because it's its own thing, right? It's like,
yeah, exactly.
You could talk about animated films, or you could talk about Disney, or like nowadays you talk about computer animated films, or it's Pixar, But yeah, I mean, when I was looking through the list, there's definitely a lot of stuff that I haven't seen. I started, which was kind of late here, but I started with Spirited Away, seeing that in theaters. I was a contrarian at the time. I didn't think it was that great. I still haven't revisited
After you watched it, you didn't think it was good?
No, like I said, it was a contrarianness in me.
Yeah,
I mean, to be honest, I didn't think it was that great. Kind of like same thing with when Pan's Labyrinth came out. I'm like, this movie's fine. But I'm wrong. I'm wrong about Pan's Labyrinth. It's amazing. I've rewatched it.
You guys can't see me, but I'm mouthing like, what the fuck? Yeah.
And I even met Del Toro that night, so I didn't tell him that I didn't love the movie, but yeah. But yeah, so I mean, I started there, And then I kind of went back because that's when I started collecting. So
Yeah.
I saw Totoro. I think Totoro is probably my favorite, just because it's like the purest.
Yeah,
And
I was just saying yes. Yeah, it's
yeah,
so pure. Hmm.
Grave of the Fireflies, obviously, which kind of just seems like an outlier here because of how depressing that film is.
Yeah.
Kiki's Delivery Service, Whisper of the Heart, Mononoke, Cat Returns, Howl's Moving Castle, and then I saw the last one I've seen was from Up on Poppy Hill. I saw that, and then Arrietty was before that. Arrietty's like the borrowers, right? Like the little
Hmm.
people.
Yeah. Yeah.
I remember like an Arrietty, Up on Poppy Hill, which I actually did when I used to do the film club podcast. We talked about that film and that movie. Did you see From Up on Poppy
No.
Hill?
No.
It gets kind of problematic towards the end.
No. There's still a lot of those that I still have to see as well.
But there's a bunch of stuff on here that, I mean, that I still want to get to. I still want to like watch all of the Ghibli films. I was about to say
Yeah.
Pixar.
They're basically that.
What about you as far as Ghibli is concerned, or
Uh,
Ghibli? What are we pronouncing it? It's like GIF, right?
I think it's Ghibli.
I
Uh,
say Ghibli,
yeah, I
but I
see.
don't know.
Um, I think, like I said, Totoro was the first one because I remember we saw it on tape, and
Hmm.
then after that, I might have seen like a little bit of Nausicaa, but back then I just like it was like too slow for me as a kid. I couldn't really get into it because I'm a kid. I want to see something. I want action or something. Little kids or whatever how they are.
Yeah.
There's still like the ones you mentioned. Like I didn't see Whispers of the Heart, or I think I did see Grave of the Fireflies. Um, what was it? Up on Poppy Hill? No, there's actually a couple other ones that they've done that I'm really interested in seeing.
Yeah.
There's one where like the girl goes back to her town to visit, I think, and she remembers seeing herself as a younger person.
Okay.
I think Daisy Ridley ended up like dubbing it when they re-released it for the Blu-rays or something like that.
Is that the Princess Kaguya one, maybe?
No. That one's like the more that one's awesome. I mean,
Okay.
it's a slow, but this one is just like it's like a human story. She just goes back to town to see like visit her family. I think she has to move back to town, and she just kind of sees herself when she was a kid in that town, interacting
Okay.
with everybody. So it's actually looks really good. Um, but yeah, for me it was like all the main ones. I think Spirited Away. I think I saw it at River East or something like that back when that big theater was in Chicago, one of
Yeah.
those
I
underground.
worked there. I worked there
Oh, that's yeah.
for like 4 years.
Yeah, I remember, yeah, seeing it there when that came out, and then of course everything else that followed up afterwards. I think after when that one came out, it's like, oh yeah, Ghibli's awesome, even though like they
Hmm.
already had a good shit ton of films that had come out before that, like Ponyo. I saw that one.
Yeah, I never
Uh,
saw Ponyo. I just heard that. Yeah.
it's a beautiful movie.
Yeah.
I think I like it more than Arrietty.
Okay.
I think Arrietty was just boring. I went to see that in the theater too, and I was like, oh my god, it's just so slow and nothing was really happening. All their films are beautiful, obviously.
Hmm.
That wasn't it. I mean, most recently, I had been waiting for. My mom took my. I left most of my DVDs back home in Chicago, and my mom kept. She like really loves Spirited Away and Howl's Moving Castle. Like she cries every
Yeah.
time she watches Howl's Moving Castle. It's like she loves it. She watches it all the time. So I'm super stoked now. After years of me bugging them on Twitter, G Kids finally released all of the Ghibli films on digital, so I could
Okay.
watch them like that. So I didn't buy all of them yet because they want $20 for each one, but they did release like six of them, the six like big ones, for like I think $100. It's like if you bought them separately, they would have been like 140 or 120. So I jumped on that immediately because I've been dying to watch those films again, and most of the ones are the ones I had watched the most anyway. But then
Hmm.
they have like the list of other stuff that they had before, like Grave of the Fireflies, the ones that I was telling you about. There's also the one, one of the last ones that came out that I really wanted to see that I missed in the theater was where it's about a guy who designs the planes that go to war.
Uh-huh.
It's actually based off of a true story, or
Is
kind
that
of
the
like,
Wind Rises one?
I
Or
think that's the one, yeah.
yeah, I heard that one looked really good.
Yeah, so that one I still want to get. Never saw any of the Cat in the Hat Return ones. So
Cat in the Hat Returns.
whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, I think
Uh,
Cat Returns and I believe Whisper of the Heart are like linked in a way. I mean, Whisper of the Heart is more of like it's just like a
mm,
grounded human,
yeah, yeah.
because like a lot of these are outlandish and fantastical, but those are just like two kids who just fall in love or whatever.
Right, right.
But Cat Return is obviously a lot more wild and it's a lot of fun though.
But I think Kiki's definitely up there for me in terms of like the Ghibli ones. Like that one and Totoro, I think, are like the big ones. But also, shit, what was that one? Porco Rosso's just fun.
Mhm.
And then the family one, I never got to see. It's kind of really weird style. It's like a
My
family.
Neighbor Yamada, is
Yeah,
it?
yeah,
I
yeah,
think it's
yeah.
called.
My
Yeah,
neighbor.
I haven't seen that
Yeah,
one either.
yeah,
I
yeah,
didn't see that. I didn't see Nausicaa. I didn't see Castle in the Sky. So like, there's a bunch of stuff I want to
yeah, yeah.
get to. But
And
yeah.
I was just it keeps falling out of my head. The one that just Mononoke, when that one came out in college too,
Yeah.
it was a big deal because it's like how crazy it was, and I love that film. So it's kind of it came out during a time when I was in school, and I was like, I'm gonna be an animator. Oh, this is great, So
That's a
it's
gorgeous film,
special.
very
Mhm.
creative. I'm not a big fan of Mononoke, but we don't have to get into that.
Yeah. So obviously we're showing how much we have watched anime.
Yeah.
So what would you say like back at least back then? What kind of how big or what was the level of fandom were you at
Well, like
at
I
the
said,
peak? At the peak.
I thought I was a poser, to be honest. So yeah, I really got into the convention thing, and so the big
And
convention out
you
in
cosplayed.
yeah, the big convention out in Chicago or in Illinois is Anime Central.
Mm.
So I think I still have my badges. I should have brought them because I could have showed like stupid fucking different names that I used for each badge. Like I don't even know. It was very cheesy.
Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, I went to that about 6 or 7 years in a row.
Oh wow.
And that was a lot of fun. But like I mean, I guess I just liked going to the conventions because like I liked that like sense of community. But then again, I didn't have like I went there with my ex-girlfriend. Like it was just the two of us,
Right. You
and,
didn't meet up
most
with
of it
friends or
consisted of
that.
we would go to panels and stuff like that. But a lot of it was just being in the exhibit hall and buying things. Because like I said, I was really big into like collecting and buying stuff.
Yeah.
So like I would, when that convention would come around, I would be excited to go to that, and then I'll like kind of beat myself up. It's like, oh, why haven't I watched anime more throughout the year that just passed? So I would get excited to watch
Right.
anime, then I wouldn't, and it would just be like an endless cycle of me buying anime but not watching it or watching some of it.
Mm.
So it was like that for a long time, until eventually it went away. Um, so yeah, I mean, I had an interest in it, in certain genres and stuff, but no, I felt like I was forcing myself
Right.
to be an anime fan when I
Yeah.
wasn't genuinely.
I
So
think I think from what you're saying, like you're definitely been a higher or more of a fan of anime than I ever
well, I
was.
went to the conventions, right? So
Yeah,
that
yeah,
was a big thing.
exactly. I mean,
Mhm.
like for me, obviously, I would go to all like the Wizard World Comic Cons back in Chicago growing
Yeah.
up. So whatever was there was there. I never cosplayed as anything up until like most recently when the Star Wars land opened up in at Disney. That was like probably the first time I really cosplayed. But
Yeah.
back then, I mean, like I did collect a lot though. I think for me, the biggest thing was because I was going to school to be an animator. My interest in it was mostly about like the animation and how well it was
Mhm.
versus story back then. Now it is very much about story. Obviously, if the animation is good, that's even better. But I wasn't what you would call like an otaku, or
Yeah.
even now like the weebs, the weeaboos.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what those are? Yeah.
But vaguely. I
So
don't
I
know.
had
I
to
guess
look
I'm
it up
not
just
as
to make
hip as I
sure.
used to be.
I had to make it up just to make sure. But so the difference, and actually, because I want to know the difference. The difference between otakus is just a fan of something, really.
Hmm.
Whereas weebs or weeaboos, which is supposed to be used as a derogatory term, like an
Yeah.
insult, is basically just the people who just think Japan and the Japanese culture is like the best culture,
Just
like
fascinated with that culture.
anime.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like they want to learn Japanese because they're just like want to be like their favorite cartoon characters and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
I mean, I think it happens a lot in a lot of things, but I mean, when they just kind of elevate just the culture because of that, that's pretty crazy. And that's also the reason why I never really got into the anime cons because there were so many of these people, and I was just like, I'm a big fan too, but I don't have to dress up to show it, you know.
Uh-huh.
And that culture was just it's so big. Like I think that's where the cosplay really began in anime versus before we started really getting into the comic book industry or whatever. I think it really just kind of kicked off with the anime fans. because there's a lot of them and they make a lot of stuff. But because of that though, like I was really into collecting the music. Like I really love the music in a lot of these shows. So I
Mhm.
would like import the CDs, import toys because I was a big fan of like I was still a collector of action figures of all kinds. So I would have my Trigun figures, my Evangelion figures, Dragon Ball figures. I remember going to Mexico when I was there. I would buy the import figures there because they wouldn't sell them anywhere else. I mean, they weren't even available in America. And this is like before, we really had the internet to buy stuff.
Mhm.
We couldn't just go online and order something, go on Amazon or go on Hobby Link Japan to
But to be
get.
honest, I was ordering from, I forgot what the name of the website, but I was ordering bootlegs, and I didn't even. I mean,
Yeah.
it seemed like it wasn't, but then now that when I got them in person, I'm like, these are totally fake. These are totally just bootlegs.
You ever notice that a lot of the DVDs that we got and were just bootlegs, just packaged up really nice?
Yeah, that's what this website was, and I still have a few because like I sold a lot of my DVD collection, and when I went to go to try to sell that stuff, it's like no, that's not. They're not
Yeah.
gonna take this. It's not real.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, yeah. And another thing I didn't get it, but so like when I was going to the conventions, it's like outside of that, like wanting to meet like groups of people who were into that stuff, I did at one point join like an online fan club, like but in the
Mhm,
area. So like
mhm.
they scheduled a meetup, and we went to City North, which is a movie theater here in Chicago, and we went there to see Tokyo Drift, which has nothing to do with anime.
Yeah.
We just went there to see Fast and Furious, but it is in Japan, so I guess it has a loose connection to anime. But we went there, and it was funny. Like, I don't know, I was just weird about it. But as soon as I got there, I didn't really know how the people looked, and there was a guy there just sweating his ass off playing Dance Dance Revolution. I'm like, I bet you he's part of the anime club, and he was. So like we all met together and we went to
Mhm.
see the movie, and I just felt really weird. So, and this is shitty, but I felt weird, so I just went out and went to the restroom and I just left. And I never
Well,
talked to them again, which I don't know. I guess I just felt like I was in over my head and I didn't know how to be social. So, yeah.
yeah. Well, around this time too, when like you said, like when you went to the cons and
Hmm.
Anime Central came up, I think it started getting really popular, obviously in America. As we
Yeah.
said, we mentioned like it was on Cartoon Network, Toonami, and also different like films, like Matrix had their own like anime style film, like an anthology
Yeah, the
film,
Animatrix, which was
the
amazing.
Animatrix. Yeah,
Yeah.
so, which they got like a lot of the famous directors from Japan, from all the anime to direct all these little vignettes. But then
Yeah.
eventually, DC Comics had something similar. Eventually, like they did one for Batman. Marvel also has like a slew of like X-Men and I forgot who else. Iron Man anime, which is really weird seeing these guys, and it looks awesome.
I saw some of the Batman one at Logan Arcade,
Hmm.
the Ninja
Yeah,
one or whatever, Ninja Batman guy.
yeah, yeah.
And it was really
And
cool.
so it's very interesting how big it got to the point where like I would say I want to touch on it really quick was when Avatar came out, which was like
Yeah.
the Nickelodeon show, which a lot of there's been some debate that people don't like calling it an anime because it's not actually Japanese, but it is basically an anime. It's just
Yeah.
all done out here. It's in the same style, and in a way, for me, it's like one of my absolute favorite shows of all time. I don't know if you ever watched it.
I started it years ago. That's that and Korra, Legend of Korra is like both of them I want to get into because I've heard how
Yeah.
fantastic they are. But yeah.
Well, definitely the first series is incredible. I mean, not only does, I mean, like the action's great, but it's just like the story is like one of the best stories, and just like the interaction, the human interaction, and all that is so good. I think it's like it's on part of like what Ghibli does. It's just like
Okay.
it gets to you. So I think that's great. But
Yeah.
because of that, because like you just mentioned how you left that group, is that how the fall? That's how you fell out of it, or when did it become like did you just grow up?
I think I just grew up. Yeah.
Yeah.
And also like I kind of go back just for a second. I'm sorry, that was a great transition, haven't I? But like get into anime eventually bridged into me getting into Asian cinema. So like I remember
Ooh, good
the
point.
first
Yeah.
year the first year I went to ASEN, uh there was another like low key convention happening that same year. I think it was called like Anime Reactor, and they actually showed live action Japanese films. So like, well, not adaptation. They just showed actual movies, like not animated. So they had a lot
Mhm.
of, they had a what's the follow-up to Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon?
House of Flying Daggers.
House of Flying Daggers they showed. I saw the end of Old Boy. I didn't know what the hell was going on. I'm totally happy I forgot it because Old Boy is one of my
Okay, good.
favorite films. I won't ruin it here, but it's like that bridged me into get into Asian cinema. But yeah, I guess it was just lack of interest. And like I said, like first of all, I was interested in other things, and I realized that. But I realized I was forcing myself to watch these. Like whenever I watch animation, and just animated stuff in general, usually, like I have a hard time focusing. Uh, so I'll watch anime, and I always try to watch it with subs, because that's the way to do it, right? Couple exceptions there. I think Bebop has a great dub. I actually think Studio Ghibli does a really good job with their voice acting, like the American voice or the English voice acting. But yeah, so I mean, I just was interested in these other things.
Yeah.
So.
I think for me, I don't know why, but I think for me it had to do a lot with the culture that kind of started growing out of it. Like even before the name existed, like the weeaboos started showing up, and I just kind of be like, you guys are ruining it for me. I just wanted to see good animation, and you guys push it to the limit, or they just get out of control, and it's just kind of like, I don't know if I really want to keep doing this. Like there's so much to catch up. I mean, and during that time, I mean, there's thousands of shows out there.
Endless, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and it's almost impossible. Like, what do I watch next? Do you remember that old chain store? It's not Spencer's. It was like an old store that had a lot of movies in it.
Suncoast?
Yeah, Suncoast. Remember,
Yeah.
Suncoast used to have
expensive.
But they used to have a lot of anime there, and I would go through there, and I would just kind of walk through and see what was new or what was there. Like, have I ever seen this? What is this?
They did have a good selection, for sure.
Huh? Yeah.
They did have a good selection, yeah.
But at the same time, like you said, it was just like it got too expensive, and for us, again, we didn't have streaming services. It was a pain in the ass to download, and even if you like pirated it and downloaded it, you forgot to download the subs. Or I didn't know how to put the subs into the show, so
merge them together or hard code them or whatever.
Yeah, so I'm like, this is too much. Like I can't keep up with this. I wanted to be the like being like the proto hipster that I was back then. I just wanted to be like, I was like, I want to see the shows before everyone knows about it, but then I can't because I don't even know what's going on. So eventually, kind of like you, I just got into more other films. And I think it's funny that you mentioned that stuff about Asian cinema because I have always had like a connection with just watching like old classic kung fu films and wushu films and stuff. And we can get into that in a completely different episode because that's a whole different genre. But so now that all that time has passed, what do you think about the current, I guess, I wouldn't even say climate, like the current, I put a current roster of anime, but like the slew of shows that's been coming out within the past decade, even because I mean that's still a lot, but there's been a lot of I know you mentioned the show, so
I mean I'm aware of a few of them. Like I've seen some of One Punch Man, and this is mostly like through Logan, like I said, Logan Arcade because they have these anime things. I saw most of the first season of One Punch Man. It's enjoyable, but it's like nothing I'm gonna go out of my way to watch. And then, I've seen some of Attack on Titan, a few episodes of that. And that's really it. That's just my extent of what I've seen.
Yeah.
I understand you could probably get more into this because you know more than me. But the movie scene seems to be thriving for animated films. Like the smaller tales.
Absolutely,
Like, I know you have a good list here if you want to go through that.
Yeah, no, yeah. I mean, but that's the thing too is that even though like I was always kind of not constantly, but kind of aware peripherally, like what was happening, but I had never watched anything. Like I have my cousins in Mexico are still like avid anime fans, so they've been watching a ton of stuff since we were all young. So like I don't know anything about Naruto, I don't know about Boruto and all that Naruto stuff. Bleach, don't know what any of that stuff is. One Piece, no clue. I think My Hero Academia, which is an incredibly huge one right now.
Yeah.
Apparently, it's like one of the most popular anime in like the past 10 years. No clue what it is. I heard it's on Netflix. I think I'm gonna see it just to see what the hype is about.
Yeah.
Like one of these things too, where I kind of want to be like a cranky old man and be like, whatever. It's not as good as the old stuff, but I want to see what it is. Like you said, I did watch all of Attack on Titan so far from what they had. Stupid show. I think it's stupid. My friend, if she heard me, she'd hate me for that, but because she really loved it. I mean, it's whatever. I'm just so into it now just to finish it, you know?
Yeah. So
It's a very
speaking of that, there's one that I forgot to mention, Death Note. I did watch all
yeah.
of Death Note,
Hmm.
and I watched the first uh, animated, the Japanese live action, the first one.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
Terrible.
I heard it was bad.
That
Yeah,
was terrible. Obviously, Netflix did their own thing, which
it was also
was
horrible.
it wasn't terrible, but it wasn't good.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, but like I did enjoy Death Note.
Mhm.
It's kind of a hard series to get through because there are really laggy periods in that
Right.
series. But then something super cool happens or a cool fucking twist happens, and it kind of gets you back into it. So it was a good series overall. I heard the
The
manga.
show is
But
awesome,
yeah.
but it's like even in the film, like the one that came out here, the Netflix one, I thought it could be really good. But the stuff with L or was this L? The
Yeah. Yeah. Well, L's the detective. Yeah.
Yeah, detective. Like the way they made him there with his like foster dad, it's like it didn't really translate well from the show being how it
Uh-huh.
was, like this kid detective, to like this other guy who's just kind of like this weirdo kid who's
Yeah,
a
I
detective.
didn't like the direction. I mean, I do like that actor. I'm not sure
Yeah,
why.
like
Do you know
Keith
Lakeith
Stanfield.
Stanfield?
Yeah.
Like, I like him a lot, but I didn't like the direction they took Elle in. And that film, which I'm sure we could get into in a future episode, maybe about like appropriation. I had no issues with that. Like,
Oh yeah, yeah. No,
it's
I
an
didn't.
American adaptation.
Yeah.
Like
No,
it's going to be
I
set
thought
in America, but I
it's
guess they did have like still like Japanese elements that were in it, uh,
right. Well, was it? It
regardless.
wasn't like Avatar, the Last Airbender.
Yeah. I
That
avoided that one, even though I'm a Shyamalan
I'm not. Um,
apologist. I'm a Shyamalan apologist, but I'm
apologies.
not watching that movie.
I will say what else? You mentioned One Punch Man. I still have never seen that one. Food Wars, I heard, is a very popular one about just a bunch of people like on a cooking show or just to be like. I what I like
That sounds
about
cool.
anime is like they could take almost any subject and make it exciting. You know, if there's a show on sports like a tennis one, or a basketball one, or there's this on cooking. There was also one other one called Fairy Tales about a bunch of people who have I don't know they're like half animals or something like that. Fruits
Okay.
Basket is another popular one. Never seen any of these.
Yeah,
I
I
did
own that one.
Fruits Basket.
I owned it, but I never watched it. Yeah.
uh, Himoto Umaro-chan, which I did watch a little bit of it. Do you know that one? It's just always been a meme. It's like she's like this hot girl, high school girl outside, but when she comes home, she turns into like this little kind of like little goblin girl. She's not a goblin, but she's just like little and she always wears like her little hamster suit and she's just always eating and playing games, never wants to go out on dates and stuff like that. People are always trying to
Okay.
ask her out, but she really just likes to sit at home, which is like basically everybody, us. JoJo Bizarre's Adventure. I remember the manga,
I
but
heard that's great. I
I
heard that's
yeah,
great.
I want to see that because I didn't even know it was how long it's been a show. The same thing with like, do you remember Fist of the North Star? That's a very old show too. I
Yeah.
remember that one, but the one that I did finish in its entirety was Kill La Kill. I don't know if you ever
Mm,
heard of that one.
no.
It's about a girl who goes to the school where everyone fights, and she gets like this suit that basically it's like the most see-through bikini, or like it's like barely there, but
Okay.
the suit's alive, and it like boosts her strength. So she gets into fights, and apparently she meets her sister, who also is like the head of the school, and she has to fight her. It's
Okay.
outrageous, but it's like I think it's from the same animators who did Foolie Cooley, so the animation is amazing.
Okay.
Um,
Did you
if you
ever watch Fully Cooley? I know they redid it.
Yeah, I
Did
heard
you
about
watch
that,
that?
but I see that.
Yeah.
No, and that's another thing too. Is like I still don't really have a lot of access to this, even after like
Hmm.
the advent of streaming services and Crunchyroll. I'm not gonna pay for that. I mean, I wish I had Crunchyroll because that seems like that would be perfect for me to view all of this stuff.
I subscribed to Crunchyroll because I thought Cowboy Bebop was on there, and then it wasn't, and I was mad. But I ended up buying it. Like it was on sale for like $5, the whole series on
Oh
Amazon.
wow,
So now I just own
awesome.
it. So yeah.
Um, the last couple of ones, Space Dandy, I heard is pretty good, which is also from the guys who did Cowboy Bebop.
Okay.
Have you heard of that one? I read up a
Um,
little bit about it. It looks interesting, so I'm gonna check it out. It's very jazzy too. It's kind of like different. I don't know if it's every episode is slightly different, but pretty cool. And Tokyo Ghoul was another big one, which is like about a guy who's basically kind of like a zombie. It's like
okay.
iZombie, basically. So there's still a lot of stuff out there, and there's still a lot of stuff continually coming out, right? That we just it it'll never end, I guess, and
Yeah.
it's kind of hard to keep us to just kind of watch it. But I'm like, after going through this whole list of stuff that we've been doing, it's been definitely kind of makes me want to get back into it too. Like I want to see, like I want to
I
see some.
definitely want to watch the anime stuff. Uh, you mentioned Fruit Baskets, but those were the series that I kind of gravitate more towards, just like more like human
Mhm.
tales. Like
Yeah,
if it gets too fucking zany and wacky, I'm not gonna do that. I'm not
yeah,
gonna watch like these action-oriented ones like One Piece and Naruto. Like I'm sure they're fine. It's
yeah.
just that's just not something that like floats my boat. Uh, but yeah, I mean, I one of them I got into a little bit was Oran High School Club, which I really liked,
Hmm.
and kind of Chobits, the one I mentioned earlier. That's just like a love story about a guy who buys who buys a robot and falls in love with her. It's very perverted, you know. He
No,
turns her
that's
on.
funny
It's
because
like,
I used to watch a lot of older shows like that too. I'm trying to
yeah,
remember. There was one where I can't remember the name of it. I think it was called Sakura something, not Sakura Wars, but it was. I think it might have been My Cousin Sakura or something like that. Anyway, it's about this girl who goes to live with her cousin, but she has a
uh-huh,
crush on him, and she's like always trying to like fuck him. But it's like
yeah,
sweet because she's like naked, only wearing an apron, and she's making him dinner, and he's kind of like oblivious to what she's doing.
uh-huh,
And I just kind of at the time I just wanted to see because it's like, oh, there's this horny girl that's after this guy, but that's all it is, you know. It's like nothing crazy. It's just them
yeah.
living their life, going to school, going to work,
Well,
which
like
is
there's so many stories have that trope of just like the two main characters, they like each other, and
mhm.
you're just watching a series to see them finally come together, fall in love or whatever.
Yeah,
Uh, which it's a trope for a reason, right? It works. But
for sure.
yes, I mean, I wouldn't mind going back to those smaller films. A lot of the big like movies that are happening out there right now, like Your Name and quite a other few ones that are
Yeah,
just like
yeah.
simple stories. Like I do want to get into those
And
because
that's kind
I
of
heard
like
those are
why
really good.
we just talked about how there's just so much of it, or there's these series are taking forever. Like one of the series that I forgot to mention, which I did start to watch, was Full Metal Alchemist, which
Hmm.
somebody got me into, and I thought I was very interesting. But then halfway into the series, or until the end of the series, something had happened where I think the creators got mad because it wasn't anything like the book. So
Yeah.
then they created another series, and it basically started all over again to follow the way the book goes, or opposite of that. So that kind of made me confused and also pissed because I'm like, what the fuck did I just watch this for? And now I gotta watch it because this is the one that continues on because the other one got stopped.
Yeah.
That was annoying, but also, yeah, you mentioned that one, The Girl Who Leapt Through Time, Weathering with You, I think came out within the last couple of years. Love Me Not. Metropolis was an old school one from back in school
Yeah,
when
I
I was
never
in
saw that
college.
one.
That was a really good one. If you like the old school Osamu Tezuka
He
comics,
did he's
Boy.
Astro Boy?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a lot of those.
Hmm.
Obviously, we mentioned Akira, Paprika, Millennium Actress, and Tokyo Godfathers. And I think there's a new one coming out. I think it's Love Me Not. I can't remember. I must have missed it, but there was there's a new Ghibli film coming out. I can't. What? I didn't write
Yeah, I
it.
could look it up real fast.
Oh, How Do You Live? That's the name. That's like the last film that they're going to be doing. How Do You Live?
Okay.
And it's also like another more human type story.
Oh, Miyazaki's.
That's his last film, I think.
Yeah. Doesn't. Yeah, he's directing and wrote the screenplay. Cool.
But yeah, I mean, I guess that goes into what we were saying. Oh, my last bit was like, what's your relationship with anime now? So we kind of know where that is.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's like pretty much non-existent for
Yeah,
right
yeah,
now.
yeah.
Uh, that Your Name movie. Actually, I've rent there's a video store in Chicago called Out Obsession Movies where you can actually still rent movies.
Mm.
And I rented that movie twice and I didn't see it both times. So. But I will one day because I hear it's really amazing. But yeah,
I think I had the one that was the girl who lived through time, and
mm,
then because somebody gave it away at work, and I just took the digital code and I sold the DVD,
okay,
right? So like I got the code, and then I went home and I'm like, oh shit, it's through Funimation or something. Like you need to have like this other thing. I thought it was gonna be for iTunes or whatever, and
yeah,
I couldn't, so I never got to see it. But but a lot of those films I do want to see, and unfortunately we can't see them. And obviously, Phantom Events, the ones who do the movie theater
yeah,
thing, is
yeah.
they usually do a couple of releases or like a 1 day release for a lot of these films. I wish some of these do have a longer release, but a lot of them don't, but I wish they did, just so it gives me time to go and see them.
Yeah, and I like how the Fathom events they do. It seems like they do a yearly Ghibli thing.
Oh
Which
yeah,
is
yeah.
pretty cool. Like where they'll show
Unfortunately,
like 2 per weekend or whatever.
I was gonna say I don't. I have the A list, but that doesn't count. I can't use my A list to go see that stuff.
Yeah, my
Um,
buddy does too, but yeah, I don't. I used to work at AMC, but they're not really convenient for me to go to anymore. So I'm more
yeah,
of a Regal guy these days,
I'm a Regal guy.
or a No Theater guy these days. So
Right, right.
like the rest of us.
But let us know what some of your favorites are. What did you grow up with? Like what did you see? What did you hate? What are you watching now? Are you still watching anime? Do you still find it interesting? Is it boring? Have you moved on to something better? Let us know. Of course, you can reach us at ohmywad@gmail.com or just hit us up on Instagram at the ohmywad Instagram account. Is there anything else you want to add?
No, not really. I know we mentioned that we had wanted to like. Is there anything that you are intending on checking out soon?
Yeah. No, yeah. I
Did this
think
inspire you?
the funny thing is after making this list, I was like, you know what? Because when I was looking up what's hot now, like what came out within the past 10 years, I saw this and they're like, oh, you can catch this on this and on this. And I'm like, okay, well, if it's on Netflix, then I'll take a look, And I think that for a while, I think Crunchyroll had some stuff that was free, but except it was like random episodes. You couldn't just watch the series from start to go. It was just whatever they were showing.
Yeah.
There was a re-release of, I don't think like I can get back into Sailor Moon again. Like they finished off the actual story from the manga or whatever. I just like, to me that show is like not, I can't watch that show anymore. It's not that, it's like it's boring to me. Like it's not that interesting. And like you said, I think there's certain things where if it's just a bunch of high school kids fighting other people or like like stuff like that, it's like I'm sure people find this interesting, but it's not that much to me. Like I want to find something that has a little bit more heart to it. And I get it. It's like when we watch regular cartoons nowadays, right? Like American audiences have Family Guy, or I mean, for me, it's Futurama is my favorite, but you know what I mean. Like you have all these different types of things, but it kind of goes up and down with like, well, I guess BoJack Horseman, we talked about it before, and that's like an animated show that's obviously has the story is more important than seeing something crazy happening.
By the way, I binged season 4 yesterday, so I'm done with that one.
All right, cool. Well, we'll definitely
we'll get into that on Sunday.
Yeah. But yeah, thanks again for listening, guys. Don't forget to subscribe and like. You can do that here too, but it's even better if you guys review us on iTunes and Spotify. And yeah,
watch us on YouTube. I actually, I'm a big YouTube guy, so I go through my subscriptions every day, and just seeing us pop up on there, our videos, I'm like, this doesn't seem right, or it's fine. It's actually pretty cool. It seems pretty surreal.
And I
still don't like looking at my face, but yeah.
I know, but I like that I've been sending Jason a bunch of these random, they're bot comments, right? Like
yeah.
Would you be my friend, or look at this porn, or something like, well, whatever. That's something. As always, keep watching, keep playing, keep listening, and keep doing what you do. Just do more of it. And we'll see you next time.